morning. I am Bhuvaneswari, Assistant Professor, Department of Mathematics from AJK College of Arts and Science. Today we are going to see about queuing theory. First, introduction. A flow of customer from infinite and finite population towards a service facility form a queue on account of lack of capability to serve them all at a time. Such waiting lines occur in our day-to-day life. The queues may be of persons waiting at a doctor's clinic or at a railway booking office, at the canteen, etc. In a queuing system, we have to introduce the following definitions. A customer, number of customer in the queue, number of customer in the system, waiting time of a customer in the queue, waiting time of the customer in the system, the number of customer who are waiting for service is called the length of the queue, the number of customer in the queue and receiving service is called the length of the system. Next, the state of the system. It is classified into two types. Transient state, steady state. When operating characteristics or time dependent is called transient state. When operating characteristics or time independent is called steady state. A queuing system is specified by the following characteristics: the arrival pattern of the customer, the service mechanism, service channels, the queue discipline. The most common discipline is first to come, first to serve or first in, first out. There are also other disciplines: last in, first out, selection in random order. Next, the capacity of the system. In some cases, when the queue reaches a certain length, no further customers are allowed to enter until space becomes available by service completion. The following symbols are used in this model. M is the number of customer in the waiting line. N is the number of customer in the system. W is the waiting time of a customer in the queue. V is the waiting time of customer in the system. Lambda is the mean arrival rate. Mu is the mean service rate. Rho is the capacity utilization. E of M is the average number of customer in the waiting line. E of N is the average number of customer in the system. E of W is the average waiting time of a customer in the queue. E of E is the average waiting time of a customer in the system. Next, we are going to see about game theory. In business management, economics and commerce, we come across competitive situation. To tackle such situation, a special discipline called game theory has been developed. In game theory, we consider two or more persons called players. The aim of the theory of games is to analyze the different situations each player has to face and different situations he has to choose according to those of the opponent. Next, definitions in game theory. A player is called a competitor. A strategy for a player is a plan which specifies his action for every possible action of his opponent. A game with two players wherein one person's gain is the loss of the other is called the two-person zero-sum game. If the best strategy for each player is to play one particular strategy throughout the game is called pure strategy game. If the optimal plan for each player is to choose different strategies at different situations, the game is called mixed strategy game. Value of game is the maximum guaranteed gain to the player B. The pure strategies corresponding to the value of the game are called optimal strategies. The position in the way of matrix corresponding to optimal strategies is called a saddle point. A game with a saddle point is said to be strictly determinable. If value of the game is 0, then the game is said to be fair. Next, dominance property. Rule 1. If the pace of the ith row are less than or equal to those in the kth row, ith row is dominated by the kth row and hence omit ith row. Rule 2. If the pay of the ith column are greater than or equal to those in the kth column, ith column is dominated by the kth column, hence omit jth column. Next, graphical method. If dominance property fails to solve a game problem, we can try to solve it by graphical method. But this method can be applied only to game problem of the type m by 2 or 2 by n. Next, we are going to see about replacement theory. In real life, we come across a number of situations wherein items are to be replaced because of sudden failure or breakdown. There are two types of failures that are considered in replacement theory. There are gradual failure, situation arising items like cars, machines, trucks, etc. Sudden failure. The cost of the machine is minimized if we replace the item when average cost is equal to the maintenance cost for this year. Replace the item if the next year's maintenance cost is greater than the previous year's average cost. Next we are going to see about network analysis. Network analysis is a technique technique which determines the various sequence of jobs concerning a project and the project completion time. Next, network and basic components. A network is a graphic representation of a project operation and is composed of activities and events. An activity is a task or item of work to be done. An activity is represented by an arrow. An event represents the start or completion of some activity. It is also known as node. An activity which does not consume either any resource and time is known as dummy activity. End events other than the end of the project is known as dangling events. Two popular methods of this technique are widely used are critical path method, the project evaluation review technique. The path takes the longest duration is called the critical path. The duration of the path is the sum of the activities coming along the path and is called the project duration. Rules of network construction. Each activity is represented by one and only one row. Each activity must be identified by its starting node and ending node. Nodes are numbered to identify an activity uniquely. Tail node should be lower than the head node. Between any pair of nodes, there should be only one activity. Arrows should be kept straight and not curved or bent. The critical path calculation are done in the following two ways. Forward pass calculation, backward pass calculation. Next, float or slack of an activity and event. Event float. The float of an event is the difference between its latest time and its earliest time. There are three types of activity floats. The difference between total float and free float is known as interference float. An activity is critical if its total float is 0, otherwise it is non-critical. An activity is critical if its total float is 0, otherwise it is non-critical. Probability consideration input. Under the condition of uncertainty, the estimated time for each activity for per network is represented by a probability distribution. This probability distribution of activity is based upon three time estimates made of each activity. T naught is the optimistic time, is the shortest time. TP is the pessimistic time, is the longest time. TM is the most likely time, is the normal time. Good morning, I am Bhuvaneswari, Assistant Professor, Department of Mathematics from AJK College of Arts and Science. Today we are going to see about queuing theory. First, introduction. A flow of customer from infinite and finite population towards the service facility forms a queue on account of lack of capacity to serve them all at a time. Such waiting line occurs in our day-to-day life. The queues may be of a person waiting at a doctor's clinic or at a railway booking office, at a canteen, etc. In a queuing system, we have to introduce the following definitions. A customer, number of customer in the queue, number of customer in the system, waiting time of a customer in the queue, waiting time of a customer in the system, the number of customers who are waiting for service is called the length of the queue, the number of customers in the queue and receiving service is called the length of the system. Next, the state of the system. It is classified into two types: transient state, steady state. An operating characteristic or time independent is called transient state. An operating characteristic or time independent is called steady state. The queuing system is specified by the following characteristics: the arrival pattern of the customer, the service mechanism, service channels, the queue discipline. The most common discipline is first come, first serve or first in, first out. There are also other disciplines: last in, first out, selection in random order. Next, the capacity of the system. In some cases, when the queue reaches a certain length, no further customers are allowed to enter until space becomes available by service completion. The following symbols are used in this model. M is the number of customers in the waiting line. N is the number of customers in the system. W is the waiting time of a customer in the queue. V is the waiting time of a customer in the system. Lambda is the mean arrival rate. Mu is the mean service rate. Rho is the capacity utilization. E of M is the average number of customers in the waiting line. E of N is the average number of customers in the system. E of W is the average waiting time of a customer in the queue. E of V is the average waiting time of a customer in the system. Next, we are going to see about game theory. In business management, economics and commerce, newcomers, we come across competitive situations. To tackle such situation, this is special discipline called game theory has been developed. In game theory, we consider two or more persons called players. The aim of the theory of games is to analyze the different situations each player has to face and different situations he has to choose according to those of the opponent. Next, definitions in game theory. A player is called a competitor. The strategy for a player is a plan which specifies his action for every possible action of his opponent. A game with two players wherein one person's gain is the loss of the other is called two-person zero-sum game. If the best strategy for each player is to play one particular strategy throughout the game is called pure strategy game. If the optimal plan for each player is to choose different strategies at different situations, the game is called a mixed strategy game. Value of game is the maximum guaranteed gain to the player B. Value of game is the maximum guaranteed gain to the player B. The pure strategies corresponding to the value of the game are called optimal strategies. The position in the B of matrix corresponding to optimal strategies is called a saddle point. A game with a saddle point is said to be strictly determinable. If value of the game is 0, then the game is said to be fair. Next, dominance property. Rule 1. If the pace of the I throw are less than or equal to those in the K throw, I throw is dominated by the K throw and hence omit I throw. If the pace of the ith column are greater than or equal to those in the kth column, ith column is dominated by the kth column, hence omit jth column. Next, graphical method. If dominance property fails to solve a game problem, we have to solve it by graphical method. But this method cannot be applied only to game problem of the type m by 2 or 2 by n. Next, we are going to see about replacement theory. In real life, we come across a number of situations wherein items are to be replaced because of sudden failure or breakdown. There are two types of failures that are considered in replacement theory. There are gradual failure. Situation arises in items like cars, machines, trucks, etc. Next, sudden failure. The cost of the machine is minimized if we replace the item when the average cost is equal to the maintenance cost for this year. Replace the item if the next year's maintenance cost is greater than the previous year's average cost. Next, network analysis. Network analysis is a technique which determines the various sequence of jobs concerning a project and the project completion time. Next, network and basic components. Network is a graphic representation of a project operation and is composed of activities and events. An activity is a task or item of work to be done. An activity is represented by an arrow. An event represents the start or completion of some activity. It is also known as node. An activity which does not consume either any resource and time is known as dummy activity. End events other than the end of the project is known as dangling events. Two popular methods of this technique are widely used are the critical path method, the program evaluation review technique. The path that takes the longest duration is called the critical path. The duration of the path is the sum of the activities coming along the path is called the project duration. Rules for network construction. Each activity is represented by one and only one row. Each activity should be identified by its starting node and ending node. Nodes are numbered to identify an activity uniquely. Tail node should be lower than the head node. Between any pair of nodes, there should be only one activity. Arrows should be kept straight and not curved or bent. The critical path calculation are done in the following two ways. Forward path calculation, backward path calculation. Next, float or slack of an activity. Event float. The float of an event is the difference between its latest time and its earliest time. There are three types of activity floats. The difference between total float and free float is known as interference float. An activity is critical if its total float is 0, otherwise it is non-critical. Probability consideration input. Under the condition of uncertainty, the estimated time for each activity for both network is represented by probability distribution. This probability distribution of activity is based upon three time estimates made of each activity. T naught is the optimistic time, is the shortest time. TP is the pessimistic time, is the longest time. TM is the most likely time, is the normal time. Thank you. We will see in the next class. Thank you.